If you look at the Korean War, the first year is a war of movement. There's up and down the peninsula. It's unbelievable how much movement there is. But then it stalemates for the last 2 years. And you think, well, what's going on? Why don't they settle the war sooner? Because both sides are taking incredible losses. Well, here's how it goes. Once China intervenes in the Korean War, and once they halt various offensives to start peace talks, the Chinese do incredible tunnel work, and probably the North Koreans as well, and build an incredible tunnel system. So it means the South Koreans and the UN forces are never going to get anywhere near the Soviet border ever again. And from that moment on, Stalin thinks he's got a low-risk, high-reward strategy where he's going to weaken the United States and delay the rise of China. So what's not to love about fighting to the last Chinese in Korea? Stalin thinks this is great. And it's going to retard Chinese development. It's also because China is so isolated by this war. It has no international friends but Russia. It's going to tie China to Russia ever more firmly and give Russia a breathing space to rebuild after World War II, while its Western enemies are wasting time in Korea. So if you put it all together, Chinese Civil War, Korean War, of Russia's on and off again aid to different sides in the Civil War, his double dealing with both of them, and what happened with Outer Mongolia and the Manchurian industrial base, Stalin's advice to Mao to halt at the Yangtze, and then he's fighting to the last Chinese in Korea. This is all consistent with the second rule of Continental Empire, no great power neighbors. All right, once Stalin dies, finest day of his life, there's never as strong a leader in Russia again. And by this time, Mao has figured out that the Russians don't want a strong China. He has to bide his time for a while, but he understands what is going on. And Mao has a growing list of gripes. It's not only he didn't like Stalin's tributary treatment, but also Mao thinks, with his resume, that he should become the leader of international communism. And Stalin's successor, Nikita Khrushchev, is like, no way. And Khrushchev does not have remotely Mao's resume. Mao has just put together a continent by reunifying China. That's not remotely what Khrushchev's ever been able to do. And Mao also can't stand either Khrushchev's domestic or foreign policy. Domestically, Khrushchev is all about de-Stalinization. Well, Mao doesn't like that. He's got a cult of personality. He doesn't want to do things like that. And then Khrushchev is interested in peaceful coexistence with the West, or at least nominally, whereas Mao is in the midst of the Cultural Revolution, which is based on a virulently anti-Western foreign policy. And then they're forever squabbling about who's aiding Vietnam in the North Vietnam in the Vietnam War and who's going to get credit for it. So all of that's going on. Now, Khrushchev has his own gripes about the Chinese. He looks around at the United States. The United States has got basing all over the world. Its allies allow the United States to have bases. And China has hardly any Russian bases, these leftover concession areas, and China wants them back. And Khrushchev can't understand this. And then what he really can't understand are the two Taiwan Strait crises of 1954 and 1958, where Mao starts lobbing ordnance on nationalist islands that are very close to mainland shores. And Khrushchev is apoplectic because Mao hasn't given him any advance warning. And by the way, this sort of thing could trigger some of the security clauses of the Sino-Soviet friendship treaty with nuclear follow-on effects. And then while this is going on, when Khrushchev wants to have a combined subfleet base, if we're going to take all these risks, we need to have subs in different places. Mao says no way. And then Khrushchev is fed up and said, well, you're not going to get the plans for the atomic bomb. Okay. And the whole thing becomes public in 1960 with anger all around. And the two, Russia and China, squabbled incessantly over the Vietnam War. And the North Vietnamese were interested in getting maximum aid from both, which it did. And they begged the Chinese to allow the Russians to ship things overland through China. So the Chinese felt obliged to do it. But the terms of that overland trade were just a food for all kinds of squabbling. It just didn't end.
If you enjoyed this clip, you can watch the full episode here and subscribe for more clips. Thanks.